Hello all of you, welcome back again. I am Samakti, your zoology teacher teaching in Sri Chaitanya Institute. Students, we were discussing about the chapter Body Fluids and Circulation, and today we are going to start with the fresh topic, which is electrocardiograph or ECG. Now this is quite important for NEET. You can see that in 2019 NEET, 2013 and 2011 questions have been asked from this part. So quite a small topic and very much crisp and precisely you will have to study how to manage all the questions from this part. Alright, so there are two things in which you get confused. One is electrocardiograph and other is electrocardiogram. Now there is a graph which is obtained as the electrical activity of the heart is measured. We have already studied the cardiac cycle, right? So there is a machine, there is a device that is used to measure the electrical activity of the heart. That device is not the gram. When you say electrocardiograph, graph is not the graph. Graph is the machine. So electrocardiograph is the machine, is the device which is used to obtain, that's what I have written, used to obtain the graphical representation of the electrical activity of heart called as electrocardiogram. So students, the term which is having graph, which is electrocardiograph, is the machine, and the graph that you obtain after this is electrocardiogram. Alright, now to obtain the standard ECG exactly given in your NCERT, that how many electrodes do you need to obtain a standard ECG? So the answer would be you need 3 electrodes. Now these 3 electrodes, where they are connected, to obtain a standard ECG you use 3 electrodes, one to each wrist and one to left ankle. So one connected to each wrist and one is connected with the left ankle. That's how you obtain a standard ECG. But students, to obtain even more activities, there are multiple electrodes that can be used in the trunk area as well. So multiple electrodes can be used in the trunk, but to obtain a standard ECG, at least 3 electrodes that you will need, one connected to each wrist, one connected with the left ankle. Now, very popularly in movies and everything, you must have seen this in the monitor of a patient, that there is something called SP and some sound is producing in the monitor, right? So these are the waves that you see whenever we obtain any electrical activity of the heart. Now there are certain waves which are named as P wave, as you can see this one, P wave, then there is an entire complex, Qrs complex, then there is another wave which is T wave, and then the another cycle is going to start. So P wave, Qrs complex and T wave. Now each wave represents something. We usually get confused when we say that in the cardiac cycle we saw that something called as atrial systole is taking place, something called as ventricular systole is taking place, like that. So whenever we say that P wave students never represents atrial systole. Actually, P wave represents the depolarization of atria. What it represents is depolarization of atria, and this depolarization of atria that further leads to atrial systole, which is contraction of the atria. Getting my point? And filling of what will take place? Ventricles. So P wave representing depolarization of atria that leads to the event called as atrial systole. Now looking at this Qrs complex. This Qrs complex is again not representing ventricular systole. What it is representing is depolarization of ventricles. It represents depolarization of ventricles that leads to the event called as ventricular systole. Also remember students that ventricular systole starts shortly after the Q wave. Shortly after the Q wave, ventricular systole starts. Alright. Now T T wave is actually representing the repolarization of ventricles. When you say repolarization of ventricles, that means the ventricles are returning to the normal state, returning to the relaxed state. But a very important point to note here is that your end of T wave represents what? This is very, very important. Given in NCERT that when you say end of T wave represents end of ventricular systole. End of T wave represents end of ventricular systole. That means the ventricles are completely relaxed, completely repolarized only when there is an end of T wave. So these are some of the waves that you obtain whenever we are going to see the electrical activity of the heart. And why do you need that? When there is always a normal graph, you know that your functioning is very much normal. But there might be condition when you see maybe elevated P wave, maybe elevated Qrs complex, maybe there is a flat T wave. Whenever you obtain such deformities in the graph, you can easily say that there is some problem. Say for example, this is not given in NCERT, but just for your better understanding, suppose you obtain a flat T wave. Suppose you obtain a flat T wave. This is flat. So that is a problem. And that problem is called as myocardial ischemia. That problem is myocardial ischemia. And what is myocardial ischemia? That is low O2 supply to your heart. That means by seeing the faults, you can easily say that there is some fault with the heart or not. Also remember that by counting the number of Qrs complex, you can actually know the heartbeat of the person. So number of Qrs complex represents the heartbeat of a person. So that's about your ECG. Now students, let's start with the topic which is quite common for all of you, that's double circulation. You can see that from double circulation also questions have been asked continuously in NEET 2013, NEET 2011 and somewhat related questions in some other years as well. Now talking about double circulation, we know that humans have got 4-chambered heart. Right side of the heart is associated with the deoxygenated blood and the left side of the heart is associated with the oxygenated blood. I can divide this double circulation into two parts. One will be your pulmonary circulation and other will be your systemic circulation. When we say pulmonary circulation, that means the part of the heart that is involved in supply is related with the lungs. Whenever you are saying the systemic circulation is associated with the tissues. Now when you are saying pulmonary circulation, which parts comes under the pulmonary circulation? I have written it over here that the deoxygenated blood is passing to the pulmonary artery. And definitely when you are saying the deoxygenated blood is carried to the pulmonary artery, it is carried from the right ventricle. So from the right ventricle, the pulmonary artery is carrying the deoxygenated blood, carries the blood to the lungs for oxygenation, and from the lungs, as the blood is getting oxygenated, that blood is carried via pulmonary vein to the left atrium. Getting my point? So we started from the ventricles on the right side. From there, the deoxygenated blood is carried via pulmonary artery, that carries the blood to the lungs. Then lungs, blood is getting oxygenated, passing to the pulmonary vein, that brings that oxygenated blood into the left atrium. Talking about the systemic circulation means the supply to your whole body parts. Aorta is going to carry that oxygenated blood from your left ventricle. That aorta is further going to divide into small arteries or arterioles and then capillaries, finally reaching the tissues. Tissue utilizes that oxygen, forms the carbon dioxide. That deoxygenated blood is carried with the help of your superior vena cava or inferior vena cava back into the right atrium. So you should know which part of your heart is called as the pulmonary heart and which part of the heart is called as systemic heart. So I hope you are clear with the pulmonary circulation and the systemic circulation. Now talking about some more circulations in your body, like there was a circulation of the lymph as well. Students, when you are talking about the circulation to the whole body parts, do you know that there is obviously there would be some blood supply to your heart, and circulation to the heart itself is called as coronary circulation. So it's quite easy. When you are saying coronary circulation, that means you are talking about the circulation of your heart. Talking about the blood supply to the heart, first let's see how the deoxygenated blood is carried. When the heart muscles are using the oxygen, ultimately CO2 is formed. The blood which is now the deoxygenated blood is carried with the help of coronary veins, and the coronary veins carries this deoxygenated blood, and see where it is dumping that deoxygenated blood is the coronary sinus. If you remember the coronary sinus we discussed in the structure of the heart, it was guarded by some valves if you remember. This coronary sinus present in the right atrium is going to take all the deoxygenated blood from the capillary, from the coronary veins. That means entire deoxygenated blood is now present in the right atrium. How the oxygenated blood is supplied? Students, we know that the biggest blood vessel called as aorta had 3 branches, right? So one of its branch called as the coronary arteries. So the oxygenated blood passing through the aorta, then passing through the coronary artery, and that coronary artery ultimately supplies the oxygenated blood to the heart. So just remember the flow chart of the deoxygenated blood and the flow chart of the oxygenated blood. Talking about one more special system in your body, NEET 2017 question was asked from hepatic portal circulation. Students, in animal kingdom also you must have studied about renal portal circulation, which is absent in mammals because we have got very well developed kidneys. But we have got a very important system which is hypophyseal portal system, that is seen, that we are going to discuss in the chemical coordination chapter. Also we have got hepatic portal circulation. Now what is the significance of having hepatic portal circulation and what does that mean? Whenever you are naming any portal circulation, students, remember that from the body part, you are not carrying the blood towards the heart. Usually we say that arteries are carrying blood away from heart, veins are carrying blood towards the heart. But when you form some portal circulation, there is some intermediate organ. Let's see what is that intermediate organ in that case. We have the digestive tract, you have got small intestine and any other parts, and you are eating food, you are digesting the food, you are metabolizing. What is happening is you are forming some product called as ammonia. Now we know that, students, our excretory product is urea. We are ureotelic, we are not a monotelic because ammonia is very, very toxic. But ammonia is formed, but this ammonia is getting converted into some other less toxic form. Because whatever ammonia is formed here, you can't carry from the digestive tract directly into your heart. What you need is conversion of this toxic ammonia. So we can't carry the blood from digestive tract straight to the heart. Why? Because if you carry the toxic blood to the heart, heart will supply it to the whole body parts. You can't do that. What is happening? There is some vein which connects this digestive tract part with the liver, and that is called as hepatic portal vein. So students, definitely the hepatic portal vein will be having very, very high concentration of ammonia. But once you reach a liver, in liver we are going to run a cycle called as Urea Cycle, where you are going to convert this toxic ammonia into a less toxic form, urea. And once the urea is formed, from the liver, the hepatic vein is going to carry this blood to your heart. That means hepatic portal vein that connects the part of digestive tract with the liver is having higher concentration of ammonia, whereas the hepatic vein that carries the blood from liver to heart is having the higher concentration of urea. So that was the question actually asked. that urea or maybe ammonia is present in higher concentration in hepatic portal vein or hepatic vein. So if urea's concentration is asked more, that is in hepatic vein. If ammonia's concentration is asked, that is more in the hepatic portal vein. Now students, let's take a brief idea about the differences between the blood vessels, arteries, veins and capillaries. Now I have made it in the differences form. I have written some of the differences. Also I would be dictating some of the differences. Now students, the wall of artery and the wall of vein is made up of similar kind of layers. So I have written the outermost layer, which is made up of connective tissue, is called as tunica externa. The middle layer, which is made up of the smooth muscles, is called as tunica media. And the innermost layer, having the simple squamous epithelium or the endothelial cells, is tunica interna. The wall is similar for veins as well, tunica externa, tunica media and tunica interna. But the wall of artery is way more thick than the wall of veins. I have written that tunica media is thin. So when you say the wall of artery is thicker, which layer is thicker is specifically the tunica media. Clear? Now the lumen of the artery is comparatively smaller. The lumen of the artery is comparatively smaller when you compare it with the lumen of the veins. Arteries are always under high pressure, veins are under the low pressure. So when the pressure is too much in the arteries, there is no need of any valves, but the valves are present in the veins. Arteries are deeply seated, they are deeply located, but veins are superficial. Besides this, you know some more differences, like arteries always branches to form capillaries, capillaries always merges to form veins. Arteries, all arteries carries oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery, and all vein carries the deoxygenated blood except the pulmonary veins. So these are some of the differences between arteries and veins. Capillary, students, you know very well that it is lined by a single layer of simple squamous epithelium, endothelial cells, which is so thin so that the diffusion is very much easy. So that's about the differences between these. Talking about the next topic, which is regulation of your cardiac activity. We know, students, that our heart is myogenic because it is auto-excitable. But we can regulate our heartbeat. We can increase and decrease our heartbeat. We have a control of hormones. We have a control of our nervous system. Let's see how we can do that. So I have written that in your medulla region of brain, you have two centers. One I have written is cardio-acceleratory center and the other is cardio-inhibitory center. As the name is suggesting, cardio-acceleratory means acceleration of the heartbeat will be seen. Cardio-inhibitory means inhibition of the heartbeat will be seen. Now talking about the moderation, your nervous system has a control. Your autonomic nervous system, which is having two parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, can either increase or decrease the heart rate. Now let's see how we do that with the help of ANS. From the cardio-acceleratory center, signals are reaching your SA node of your heart. When the sympathetic nervous system is in action, it acts upon the SA node. It releases epinephrine and norepinephrine, also called as adrenaline and noradrenaline. When this is acting upon SA node, your heart rate is increasing. And you know that when your heart rate increases, your cardiac output also increases. That's the action of your sympathetic nervous system. Talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, that is acting via your vagus nerve. I have written vagus nerve. Vagus nerve specifically acts upon your SA node and it releases a neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. Whenever acetylcholine will be released in your SA node, your heart rate decreases, your cardiac output also decreases. Your epinephrine, norepinephrine of sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate. Your acetylcholine of the parasympathetic nervous system decreases the heart rate. Also remember, students, that sympathetic nervous system can stimulate your adrenal medulla. adrenal medulla to release the hormone epinephrine and norepinephrine, which also increases the heart rate. So ultimately you can regulate your cardiac activity. Now let's move to the last part of this chapter, which is the disorders of the circulatory system. Talking about all the disorders one by one. Now talking about the very first disorder, which is hypertension. Hyper means more. Hypertension is the high blood pressure. The device that is used to measure the hypertension, high blood pressure, is sphygmomanometer. It's sphygmomanometer. Now talking about the normal BP of any patient, any person, that's 120 by 80 mmHg. 120 by 80 mmHg. 120 is representing the systolic pressure, and the 80 is representing the diastolic pressure. Also you can say 120, which is the systolic pressure, is the pumping pressure, and the diastolic pressure is the relaxed state pressure. Alright. Now whenever you will say that the person is having hypertension, there should be continuous rise in the pressure. At least the systolic pressure should be 140, at least the diastolic pressure should be 90 for twice or thrice times. So if you see the systolic pressure to be 140, diastolic pressure to be 90, then only you will say that the person is having hypertension or high blood pressure. The problem of high blood pressure can affect all the organs in your body, no doubt. But the vital organs which are affected due to the maximum supply of blood, the vital organs that are affected the most is your brain and kidney. So because of hypertension, the maximum probability of affecting the brain and kidney. Now talking about the other, which is coronary artery disease. CAD in short, you say coronary artery disease. Now what is this coronary artery disease? Students, it is also called as atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis, and you have also used the term coronary. Using the term sclerosis means you are depositing calcium, fibers, cholesterol. So the deposition of calcium, fibers, cholesterol around the blood vessels, inside the blood vessels that supply blood to the heart, like the coronary artery. So if you are depositing everything in this, inside of this, what is happening? Cholesterol deposition, calcium deposition, fibers deposition, the lumen will become thin, small, and that is going to affect the blood supply. And this condition is called as coronary artery disease, where the lumen is getting narrower because of the deposition of such things like calcium, cholesterol and everything. Alright, now talking about the next disorder, which is angina pectoris. Angina pectoris actually means acute chest pain. This is acute chest pain when no enough oxygen is reaching the heart muscles. Now when you are saying that enough oxygen is not reaching the heart muscles, it might be because of the conditions that is doing the poor supply to the heart. If there is a poor blood supply to the heart, in that condition also, that means if your blood vessels are affected, that might also lead to angina pectoris. So any condition that is affecting the blood supply, which is why your low O2 is reaching your heart muscles, due to which acute chest pain is seen, is called angina pectoris. And students, even this atherosclerosis can be one of the reasons of angina pectoris. Also remember that this is more commonly seen in middle and elderly aged people than the younger people, because maybe, say for example, even the condition of deposition of fat, cholesterol, calcium, that is going to affect ultimately the blood supply to the heart, is more commonly seen with age. So angina pectoris literally means acute chest pain. Alright, now talking about two conditions, one is heart failure and other is heart attack. Heart attack, other name is myocardial infarction. Myocardial infarction is the other name of heart attack. Now what is the major difference between these two? Once you say heart fail and once you say heart attack. Now students, if I say, don't say that you are failed. If somebody is failed, that means whatever work was given to that person, he is unable to do that. When you are saying heart failure, the function of heart was to pump blood to the body parts. If heart is failed, that means the function of the heart is not performed. Heart is failed to pump enough blood to the body parts to meet the demand of the body. That's when you are saying heart failure. Heart failure is also called as congestive heart failure. Congestive heart failure because one of the very common symptoms that you see in case of heart failure is accumulation of fluid around the lungs, which is called as congestion of lungs. That's why the heart failure is also called as congestive heart failure. Now talking about heart attack, which is myocardial infarction, when heart is being attacked, that means heart is not receiving the enough blood. What will happen if the heart is not receiving enough blood? Then slowly your heart muscles will die. Heart muscles will die due to not receiving enough blood. That condition is called as heart attack. So heart failure means heart is not pumping blood. Heart attack means heart is not receiving enough blood. Now talking about the last, which is cardiac arrest. This is the condition when there is complete stoppage of heartbeat. Students, not in any condition you will see complete stoppage of heartbeat. There is just one condition where you are seeing the heartbeat is completely stopped. That is called as the cardiac arrest. So these are some of the disorders that is mentioned in your NCERT. Frequently even questions have been asked from this part too. So remember that whatever, even circulation, I told you already 2 to 3 questions are probably we are expecting in NEET 2020. Make sure, I am telling you over and over again and again, read your NCERT carefully. Make sure you read everything given in your summary, everything written in your diagram, everything given in the theory part, so that you are preparing good for the NEET. So that's how we complete the chapter Body Fluids and Circulation. We are going to come back with the next chapter. Till then students, take care, bye bye, stay happy.